Good evening and welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana, 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I'm here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU or UCIMC, or, as we like to say on the televised version of this show, UPTV. These views are our own, and by our, in this instance, I mean myself, and no one else. So blame me. Just blame me. Anyway, so I don't know what else to say about that, except that that is what it is, and it is what it is. And it has always been that, and I say that every week, and I've been saying that every week for ever, except when I used to talk about the Socialist Forum and when the show used to have a different name. But it's the same stuff. But in any event, we have to legally say it every time. Just so you'll know, if you're listening for the very first time and you're going, I can't believe that WRFU would say such a thing. Well, they're not. It's just me. Or UPTV. Or UCIMC. Or anyone else. It's just me. I'm saying this. And actually, it's a lot of this, I read news articles, so it's a lot of this is someone else writing, and I'm reading what they're saying. But I'm doing it for a reason, to make you think, to give you information, that sort of thing. So, let me continue. So we're back again. Once again, it's Monday night, or if you're watching UPTV, it's Friday evening, I think, is when we're on. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it's whenever you happen to watch it. So we're on all the time in some strange sort of way, and all around the world in some strange sort of way. So anyway, I'm going to start out with something that I thought was kind of interesting. Not that it's providing any information that isn't kind of obvious, but it was interesting that somebody studied this and that they came up with this, and it will become apparent to you once I read you the story. So this is entitled, Researchers Uncover a Simple Way to Positively Affect Attitudes Towards Immigration. What could that be? Let's find out. Accurate information can reduce negative attitudes towards immigration in the United States, according to new research published in the journal Demography, and this effect persists for at least a month. The study provides causal evidence that misinformation about immigration influences people's policy preferences. Who would have guessed? Quote, I am interested in how attitudes towards minorities are formed and whether information has a role in correcting misperceptions and affecting policy preferences, explained study author Diego Ufa, an assistant professor at Bocconi University in Italy. Now, I will, editorial aside here, I will point out this is being done in Italy. It's not here in the United States, so if you're sitting there going, oh, there's socialist Democrats or something, if you're thinking things like that, realize this is being done in Italy in entirely different circumstances, but with a similar situation, at least in the sense that there are some people who are saying, oh, immigrants are bad, and other people are saying, no, we should welcome. Anyway, back to our story. In this paper, we wanted to test whether correcting misperceptions about the size and characteristics of the immigrant group can lead to less negative attitudes towards immigrants. Eventually, this could reduce prejudice, facilitate the integration of immigrants into society, and limit support for anti-immigration policies. I'm sorry, I have to do another editorial aside here. If the notion behind this is thinking that somehow misinformation is accidental or being produced by people that don't realize they're producing misinformation, then this person is woefully naive. But anyway, moving on. From a personal point of view, my experience as an immigrant in Italy and the United States has been very positive. But in many cases, I heard people saying that I was not the immigrant they had in mind when they expressed their support for anti-immigrant policies, Upfall said. This is in line with the theory we cite in our paper that people identify with the idea of a deserving immigrant category. In our context, one that comes to the country legally, who wants to work, does not commit crime, and quickly learns the local language. In the study, 1,995 people living in the United States reported how worried they were about immigration, and were then asked to estimate the proportion of immigrants in the United States, the proportion of undocumented immigrants in the United States, the unemployment rate of immigrants, incarceration rate of immigrants, and proportion of immigrants who cannot speak English. The researchers found that participants tended to have higher estimates than the actual values. In other words, U.S. residents tended to overestimate how many immigrants were in their country and also misperceived their rate of unemployment and incarceration. Half of the participants were then told the correct answers to these 5 statistics about immigration. All of the participants then answered more specific questions about their views of immigrants and immigration policies. The researchers found that those who received the correct answers became more supportive of legal immigrants. For example, those who received the correct statistics were less likely to say that immigrants have produced more disadvantages than advantages for the United States as a whole over the last 10 years. We show that by providing information on the average characteristics of immigrants in the United States, we can positively affect the attitudes groups opposed to immigration, e.g. Republicans, had before receiving the information. We believe this is because those who receive the information realize that the average immigrant is more in line than they had previously thought with the deserving immigrant category they formed in their minds, Upfall told SciPost. The study had a number of strengths. We conduct a randomized controlled trial to be able to claim the effect of the information on attitudes in a causal effect. We have outcomes, donation and petition, that do not rely on self-reported answers. We have a follow-up to rule out that effects are ephemeral. We elicit beliefs before and after the information is provided to show how they change in treatment and control groups, Upfall explained. One caveat is that we do see that a month after the information is provided, there is again a small overestimation of the statistics. This could indicate that repeated interventions might be necessary to achieve more persistent effects, he noted. The main question that still need to be addressed are the importance of the credibility of the agent who provides the information, the government, scientists, or the media, and how this information is provided in order to have a stronger impact, e.g. basic statistics or emotional anecdotes. Well, I mean, this isn't or shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that this would be the case. And one reason this show exists, in fact, is to provide accurate information, is to give you the truth about immigrants. Immigrants are people. Immigrants are people that travel from place to place, seeking or searching, one of the two, or combine them together to make seeking, new jobs, opportunities, safer place to live, whatever the reason is, to be closer to their family. But the point is, we try to get across the basic humanity of immigrants, the fact that they're people, the fact that most of them are hardworking, the fact, and this is one of the facts I repeat over and over and over again, and I feel like a broken record sometimes, but I honestly think that it just doesn't get to most people. And that is that leaving your country and going to a new place, and I know longtime listeners have heard me say this a million times, but doing this, picking up everything and moving to a new place is incredibly difficult. It is a huge decision. It is a very important, life-changing decision that is not made lightly by anyone. I mean, nobody just goes, I could take a nap or move to America. You know, I mean, it just does not happen. So when you're talking about immigrants, you're talking about people that are very motivated to make that change for whatever the reason. And so because they're starting out in this new place with everything is like strange and different, and they have little to no support system, they're motivated to make it work, to do what it takes to make it work. So this notion of lazy immigrants coming here for benefits, aside from the fact that legally they can't get, 99% of the benefits they're accused of coming here to get, they can't get and don't get, and have never seen and aren't expecting to get. They're also trying very hard to make this thing work. So they're hard workers by nature, as a rule. Sure, somewhere, someone might be lazy and somehow just, all right, I'll go to America and, I'll just hang out there because I've been hanging out here. I mean, it could happen. There could be somebody that somehow found themselves swept up in the move to the U.S. and came here and were just as lazy here as they were where they came from. But really, by and large, these are groups of people that really, really care and are trying and want to achieve something. So anyway, that's one of many of the points that I try to make here over and over and over again, boring you to death if you listen to the show a lot, but hopefully getting through to the casual listener once in a while that, maybe I should rethink my opinions about immigrants. It's not a they, them, mysterious aliens who are coming here and trying to change this country into where they came from. No, they left their country because they wanted to be here, not there. If you were, this is not, maybe people are too caught up in their colonial mindset and they're thinking back to pilgrims or something coming over who wanted to find a new place to recreate their old world, except without the king or without the Catholics or without the Protestants or without whatever group it was that they were running away from. But since the U.S. is now a place with an identity, people are not coming here wanting it to turn it into El Salvador Part 2 or, Bolivia Part 2. They're wanting to be here because it is what it is. And so a lot of the notions about immigrants, I don't think are really necessarily explicitly stated. They're sort of implied and assumed and then absorbed by people that listen to it, casual listeners to intentional misinformation. And it is intentional 99.9% of the time. And the rest of the time it is someone innocently repeating something that was intentional misinformation that they are spreading because they think it's true. But yeah, they absorb this stuff, and woven into it are these notions of lazy criminal people who are looking for handouts and who are trying to change this country into something different. And, all those different things are kind of woven into it. And that's where they get this stuff, because I'm pretty sure nobody's actually saying it. And if they are, they're even more lunatics out there than I would have imagined. Anyway, enough on that point. I need to move on. I thought that was interesting, but it isn't really any news to anyone that has half of a brain. But I guess if more people had half of a brain, then we'd have more brains out there. So now that I've insulted a large part of the population, I will move on. Remember, these views are my own. Okay, moving on. For more than a decade in Pittsburgh, we lived the U.S. immigration nightmare. The pandemic sealed our move to Canada. So this article is about someone who's tried to come to the U.S. as immigrants and just gave up and went to Canada. And here's the story. My husband and I lived in the United States for 18 years and proudly called Pittsburgh home for most of them. We built our lives and careers there. I worked as an entrepreneur, consultant, and most recently, the Director of Strategy at UPMC Enterprises, developing cutting-edge healthcare solutions. My husband worked for the University of Pittsburgh as a software engineer, then at UPMC Enterprises as the Senior Director of Product Management. Yet despite our love of Pittsburgh and our contributions to the region, we couldn't find a way to stay. After 12 years of unsuccessful attempts to become permanent U.S. residents, applying for green cards and visas, petitioning Congress to pass fair immigration laws, even twice accepting invitations to the White House, the pandemic finally sealed our decision to leave. In March, the Department of State stopped processing visas altogether, a sign that it was time to move on. We finally did what we've been trying to avoid for years. We left Pittsburgh and moved to Canada. Despite never having lived there, we were welcomed with open arms. Our immigration journey began in 2002, when we each arrived in the United States separately for graduate school. My husband attended Pitt. I got a PhD from Texas A&M and later a master's from Carnegie Mellon University. In 2008, my husband applied for a green card through Pitt. Due to administrative errors, his application was rejected, setting us back 3 years. The issue was so unprecedented, I was later told it led to Pitt completely overhauling its immigration process. We were back to square one. As a Band-Aid fix, my husband applied for a temporary work visa so he could stay in the country. At that point, we thought we'd just have to wait a bit longer until his green card was approved. What we didn't realize then is how long we'd be waiting. After finishing my master's at CMU in 2013, I took a consulting job in New York City. Moving to one of the world's most exciting cities should have been a cause for celebration. But my husband's visa and green card application were sponsored by Pitt, so despite receiving several job offers in New York, he couldn't come with me. It didn't take long before we became frustrated with the long distance and the restrictive immigration process. Feeling out of options, we packed up shop and headed back to our home country, India. Returning to India meant we could be together and that I could pursue my passion for entrepreneurship. I had started my first company, an education technology startup, while I was a student at CMU. But because I was on a dependent visa, I couldn't legally work, not even at my own company. We stayed in India for about a year, but we truly loved living in Pittsburgh, and deep down, we were still hopeful the green card would come through. In 2014, despite our immigration issues being unresolved, we decided to return. Back in Pittsburgh, I co-founded another startup, an SaaS-based manufacturing analytics company. As an aside, I don't know what SaaS. It's capital S, lowercase a, capital S. SAS, whatever, based. Anyway. I was still authorized to work, so instead, I still wasn't authorized to work, so instead I volunteered. It was a hard line to walk. I wanted to be involved in the company I had helped to build and put my 2 graduate degrees to use, but I had to make sure I wasn't breaking the law. Shortly after, the Obama administration passed a program that allowed people on dependent visas like me to qualify for employment authorization. I remember the exact day the application went live, May 26, 2015, because we had my paperwork ready to go. A few months later, I was approved. Finally, a win. With the newfound freedom to work, I went on to lead a business incubator in Hermitage, Pennsylvania. I consulted for local nonprofits and eventually landed at UPMC Enterprises. I loved collaborating with others in Pittsburgh's innovation ecosystem to help build the region. I was finally able to put my ideas in motion. All I needed was the chance to do so. But our problems weren't solved yet. At times, the tension between being valued for my skill set, yet feeling othered on paper, was glaringly ironic. Once the Department of State sent me to represent the United States at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Bahrain. Waiting for me when I got back was a request for evidence of my visa paperwork. After President Trump was elected, our situation grew worse. The immigration process had already been difficult, and we knew there were likely to be even more obstacles ahead. We needed a backup plan. So in the fall of 2018, we applied for permanent residency in Canada. Given our struggle in America, our hopes weren't high, but in May 2019, fewer than 6 months after applying, our application was approved. Still, we didn't immediately decide to move. Maybe in a few years, we thought. Even when presented with such an inviting opportunity, we wanted to make Pittsburgh work. We tried so hard to fix the problems we faced with America's immigration system. Since 2014, we have been involved with an advocacy group called Immigration Voice, traveling to Washington, D.C. to advocate for the rights of high-skilled immigrants like ourselves. For over a decade, the group has been trying to eliminate per-country caps, or the rule that no one country can receive more than 7% of the employment-based green cards issued, regardless of demand or the country's population size. If passed, the legislation would affect more than 1 million high-skilled immigrants across the country, according to the Cato Institute. The bill passed in the House in 2019, but remains in the Senate. In March, when visa processing was suspended, we knew it was time to go. We sold our house in Edgewood, began hunting for jobs in Canada, and within a few weeks had crossed the border into our new country. When we arrived in Canada, we immediately noticed a difference in how we were treated. We'd never lived there before, yet everywhere we went, government offices, the bank, every single recruiter, people told us how happy they were to have us. Our Pittsburgh community is incredible. So many friends, neighbors, and colleagues were supportive of us throughout our time there, and especially during the last few months as we made our move. In fact, our network even connected us with like-minded people in Toronto, so we feel like we already have a community here. But very few people know what is happening with federal immigration, and I believe the system is complicated intentionally. Oh, really? Our case is not unique. We are friends with several other couples who are also in the process of moving to Canada. Yet many of the large organizations equipped to take on this fight in Pittsburgh chose to keep their distance. Why ruffle feathers and risk losing allies? America was built on the backs of immigrants, and despite its recent shortcomings, it remains a beacon of hope in the world. It's so disappointing to see talented people who want to contribute to the fabric of society being pushed away. My husband and I chose to settle in Toronto, one of the most diverse cities in the world. 2 weeks ago, I accepted a job as the Vice President of Business Development at the Ontario Centres of Excellence. I'll be working to foster innovative collaborations between Ontario's universities, research hospitals, government entities, and industries. It may sound silly, but one of the things I'm most looking forward to is voting. I left India before I was old enough, and I was never able to in America. In 3 years, at 42 years old, I might be able to finally vote for the first time. Down the road, I've been considering pursuing another lifelong goal, running for office. I've long felt called to politics and standing up for the issues I believe in, but in the United States, it seemed like I'd never be given the chance. Maybe I'll do it in Canada, a country that genuinely wants me to be here. So that harkens back to several things that I've read before to you and information that I've shared about what the Trump administration is doing and has been doing with immigration for as long as it's been in effect in the last 3 some odd month years. Now, this article is written a bit slanted towards the importance or the value of highly skilled immigrants. And let's face it, highly skilled people are very welcome. We can use them in all sorts of ways. It's very important. But people of good character, people of good heart, with good hearts, excuse me, people who are optimistic and forward-thinking and forward-looking are important, regardless of their skill level. Families can go from working, minimum wage jobs to having children that are PhDs coming out of college. I mean, it can take one generation and people are jumped to being highly skilled. So it's the skill level of someone who arrives here is not the important thing. It is the motivation level. It is the excitement and desire for improvement level that we want to see. So I don't want to be too caught up in this notion of highly skilled people as being an important group to focus on. Yes, they're important. Yes, they should be welcome here, but they're not the only people who should be welcome here. And I just bring that up because it's easy for these things. It's like the old argument that I can remember again and again and again. There were all these articles about the cost of immigration. Does it take something away from American workers? Does it cost us, or is it a benefit? Benefits and costs, back and forth, always looking at dollar signs and never thinking about the people involved. And so I remember before that always seemed to be the argument before the current administration sort of ran with the immigrants that are criminals and rapists and disease carriers and all. I mean, like really going for the lowest common denominator. For a while there, the argument was always about cost. And so I found myself constantly making the argument that immigrants are more of a benefit cost-wise than anything else, but also having to constantly add to that is not the only reason. The money is not the only reason. So again, with this highly skilled versus not highly skilled, let's say, debate, I don't want to get into this thing about the skill level being the most important aspect. It is something that is important to our economy, yes. And we need to be aware of it, and we need to be doing things about it, but it is not the only reason to welcome people into our country. Okay. Having said that, my next article is entitled Trump Immigration Policy Now Blocks World's Most Highly Skilled. And we come back to this topic again. Hence my disclaimer beforehand. Okay. Today, even the most highly skilled individuals in the world cannot enter America under the Trump administration's immigration policy. Reports from attorneys and a statement from the State Department confirm that U.S. consular offices in Europe are denying 0-1 visas for individuals with extraordinary ability based on a health pretext. I don't know if that's 01 or 01. I think that's 01. Sorry, I just misread it. Based on a health pretext. The strict interpretation of Trump's presidential proclamations mean individuals that U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, have found to possess extraordinary ability or a record of extraordinary achievement are and will be refused visas in Europe and cannot come to America. What is an O1 visa? The O1 non-immigrant temporary visa is for the individual who possesses extraordinary ability in the sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics, or who has demonstrated a record of extraordinary achievement in the motion picture or television industry and has been recognized nationally or internationally for their achievements, according to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services.